Hey guys, so last week we started doing a video podcast to go along with our audio podcast. Basically just videoing us doing our audio podcast. Just trying to get some more content out there and meet the needs that some people have. They obviously like watching the video instead of just listening to the audio. Like to see our faces and see our expressions and all that. And so this week was going to be the second week of that.
We messed it up week two.
Messed it up because we did an interview today for this week's podcast. And so it was a call-in interview, and you wouldn't have been able to hear the audio from the phone call. So we had this great idea. So the interview, you need to go listen to the podcast. So this week's podcast is an interview with Julie Baumgardner, who is the Senior Director of WinShape WinShape Marriage over in Rome, Georgia. And we have
I really like her.
Oh yeah, it was a great interview.
Yeah.
It will give you some great insight as to their resources that they have that can be of help to you. So as we were trying to think through, well, we hated to just do a video and then not do the one the very next week, and so we wanted to just do something that was going to tie in with the interview. So you guys have heard us. We've talked many times before about our marriage intensive. So that's our connection to WinShape, and how we first got involved with WinShape was because we attended a marriage intensive. So we just thought we'd take just a second to kind of go alongside with that interview, and we would create this video where we could just tell you guys about our experience with WinShape Marriage and our experience with the marriage intensive. So just for a couple of minutes, probably be more than a couple of minutes, but for the next few minutes, we're gonna just tell you our story of how we ended up at the marriage intensive and what that meant to us.
Yeah.
So to tell the story, you have to actually go all the way back, way before our marriage crisis, to 2004. And so we were at a wedding at Berry College in Rome, Georgia, a family member. And at this wedding at Rome, Georgia, we had the chance to go on a tour of the old dairy farm. And so Bubba and Cindy Cathy, Bubba is Truett Cathy's son. So Truett Cathy's the founder of Chick-fil-A. WinShape, the WinShape Foundation, is a part of the Chick-fil-A company, and part of it's what Truett Cathy put together many years ago, but now it has all these other branches to it. Well, Bubba and Cindy had a passion for marriages, and so they were renovating the old dairy farm and took us on a tour of the old dairy farm.
Yep.
And as we were going through this tour, they were telling us how their plan was to use it for marriages that were in crisis, and they were going to use some other ministries and counseling services to come in and basically do these counseling retreats, is what they were calling it. And of course they were touring us, and we were just looking at all of the beautiful renovations that were being done,
and how pretty it was going to be.
Yeah, just it was impressive, and just to hear their hearts for marriage ministry. And so we got to see it. It was still in construction phase, and that was kind of the end of it. 2004, we never heard another word about it. And so fast forward to 2011, and in August of 2011 was when, you guys have heard our story, but when I came home one night and Heather confessed that she had been unfaithful. And so really the story is that night, you can listen to our podcast, and you know that we
Episode 20
starts our story. But we talk a lot about just, well, I'll say this, there was not an immediate forgiveness. There was not an immediate, we're going to work this out and we're going to fight. I mean, we went through some hard, I was extremely angry, completely blown away by this, had no idea. And we went through lots and lots of counseling and things like that. However, the very first night I left the house and I was very angry. And I went and drove around. I actually went and talked to someone that I thought I could trust. And when I came back home, I went and I laid in bed with one of our kids. Our kids were 9 and 5 at the time. And I went and laid in bed with one of our kids. It was late at night. I mean, 2 or 3 in the morning, I think, when I got back. And as I was laying there, I was not convinced that our marriage was going to survive. I just didn't know. But something inside of me was saying that this was going to be a long road, and God was already speaking and stirring. And again, I'm not saying that night I was like, oh, I'm fighting, this is it, I'm doing this, we're going to stick together. Like, I didn't know the whole story. There was a lot of stuff to iron out, but something inside of me was just saying, you know, what do you do? What are the steps that you can take? And so I don't know why, but as I was laying in the bed, it just came to me, and I started thinking about Bubba and Cindy Cathy and the tour they gave us. And I thought, wow, I wonder if that place even still, if they even finished it, and if it still exists. I mean, it had been 7 years. And so I didn't even know where to start. So I had my phone. I actually Googled Bubba and Cindy Cathy marriage retreat. And this article popped up about it, and come to find out, there was this incredible resource that was called a marriage intensive. And laying there in the bed that night, I knew that if our marriage was going to survive and make it, that was going to be a part of the journey. And so over the next several days and weeks, as we got into counseling, we expressed to some family that we wanted to go to that. They encouraged us to make the phone call and to inquire about it. And within 2 months, we were able to go and experience the marriage intensive that WinShape Marriage had put together. So you may want to why don't you tell them just about our experience and what it was like, and it may just spark some interest from some of our listeners. They may think this is something that we need to consider.
Sure. Well, I think that for us, we very much knew, like, this has the potential to save our marriage, or we could be done. And so we were kind of putting a lot was riding on it. We were hopeful that it was going to be a big step in saving our marriage. And so we went with 4 other couples, obviously, that we did not know. There were 5 couples total. And we were there for a week with 2 counselors. And we did all of our sessions in a group. It wasn't like, it's not like Rusty and I went with the counselors and then they went with the counselors. We did it all in a group, which was a little bit, I was a little bit nervous about, because I'm like, I'm fixing to tell all of these intimate and embarrassing for me things. But it just wasn't like that at all. It was just a sweet, sweet time. And the counselors poured into us, poured into other people, and we learned even from their stories things that God was trying to teach us. And just to be surrounded by people who were all desperate to save their marriage, and in a very intense setting, like we focused just on that. But it was really cool because we had a chef that came and cooked for us. Made every meal. We ate all of our meals together. The housing arrangements were amazing because it was on we could have 2 different ends. We had a common room, and then Rusty had a side with a full, a room to himself, and I had a room to myself, or you can share a room, just depending on where you are.
And the great thing is they didn't ask.
Yeah, are y'all sleeping in the same room?
Yeah, it was just like, hey, here's your
Mm-hmm.
suite, and like you kind of had the option if you were sleeping in the bed together, then you could sleep together,
Mm-hmm.
or if and nobody ever asked us, and we did sleep in the same bed together, but I just thought that was so cool that nobody ever asked us.
Mm-mm.
Nobody knows.
Mm-mm.
Except the world now.
That's right. So we did have sessions too, to where they would give us time to go off and work on some things, on some tools that they gave us, and that was really neat too. But then in breaks and things like that, we could go for walks at Berry College, and it was just a beautiful environment. But God used that to save our marriage, without a doubt. Now, could he have done it through another means? Of course. But he chose to use that amazing time for us to reconnect and to learn a bunch of ways, a bunch of tools that we literally still use 11 years later, with communication and with how to treat one another and how to seek God first, most importantly. So it was a great experience.
Yeah, and it was so neat just talking to Julie today, because now she's completely in charge of all of WinShape Marriage, and there's so much more than just the marriage intensive, and she was talking about that on our podcast interview today.
Yeah.
And just how, there's stuff that you can go and sit and learn from speakers. There's also just retreats that you can...
What'd she call it? Play?
Yeah, and I just looked it all up yesterday, and I can't remember the names of them, but...
ropes courses and things like that.
And like, you don't have structure. It's just like a place for you and your... I think they give you some tools and things that you can do, but you're not like sitting in a conference setting, and that's for just any marriage. Marriages that you're just wanting to work on your marriage, and they have them all throughout the year. And it's not, there's parenting ones. There's actually one coming up in the next couple of weeks, I think, for couples with special needs kids. And it's just such an unbelievable ministry. And so you can go to WinShape Marriage and check out all of their resources. We're going to put all throughout the week, we'll have different the links and stuff where you can go and check it out. But we just wanted you to know, because we've had a real experience with WinShape Marriage, and we highly recommend it. And we're already looking ahead to go to one of these retreats that is not a marriage intensive, because we don't need the marriage intensive, thank goodness, anymore. We've already done that, and it did save our marriage. So we just wanted you guys to know our story, how we were connected with WinShape Marriage, and really encourage you to take a look at it. And go and be a part of whatever you can be a part of, or wherever God leads you to be a part of within those different retreats and settings. So, and feel free, reach out to us, like comments or reach out to us. Yeah, if you want to know specific information about it and you just need some input from somebody that's been there, we would love to be able to share that with you. So, yeah, that's our story of the marriage intensive, and so thankful that resource is out there for all of us. All right.
See y'all next week.
See you next week.